They are Peruvian, they are Mexican, but they feel Korean. Let's talk about trans Koreans.
I have Korean ancestry. Korean ancestry?
Seriously?
How so? Well, it's because I have Korean genes.
Korean descent? Wouldn't it be ancestry instead? But anyway.
I felt connected to the language. It's just that now I'm trans-Korean.
That's what life sounds like when you're Mexican, but you identify as Korean. Man, I identify with Bill Gates' wallet. Stop thinking you're Korean because you're not.
I want an Asian guy.
You wouldn't want a guy with regular eyes, so to speak, here in Mexico.
Oh no, they're all so tacky. Have you seen those teenagers on TikTok who are super obsessed with Asian culture? Yeah, those same ones who use such strong filters that they could purify water, and if God came down to earth, he probably wouldn't even recognize them. Because they literally change all their features in the photos. These girls buy creams to lighten their skin. They use foundation that's 20 shades lighter, wigs, Korean makeup, and they eat absolutely everything with chopsticks because supposedly they don't want to lose their Asian essence. You'll easily recognize her because her whole personality revolves around Korea. Her favorite songs are Korean, her favorite shows are Korean, her favorite artists are Korean.
They know everything about Korea, which is incredible, but they've never been there.
Of course, the ideal man is also Korean. Some even claim that their great-great-great-grandfather's great-great-grandfather was Korean.
I mean, it's not impossible. There have been Korean settlements in Latin America, so it's not that crazy.
Although honestly, I think I have more Korean roots myself. The closest I've been to Asian culture is when I buy Chinese-style rice at the corner near my house on weekends. But anyway, that trend is known as trans-Koreans. That is, Asians trapped in bodies.
You stop being Bolivian and become trans-Korean.
Peruvians, Colombians, or Mexicans. According to those who follow this trend, nationality doesn't depend on where you were born, but on where you feel you belong.
Mexicans are born wherever the hell they want, as some would say, right?
This girl spends her time singing songs in Korean and claiming that she understands perfectly everything they're saying, although many of them still have trouble even pronouncing their native language, and of course they dream of having a Korean boyfriend, because the internet convinced them that they're all gentlemen, romantic, and straight out of a K-drama.
And although it's true that there are many Korean men who are clean and dress well, that's just a stereotype. Look, I lived in South Korea, you know that, it's no secret. Many people in South Korea dress kind of randomly, so don't assume everyone dresses like in K-dramas. Those are in areas of Korea like the Gangnam neighborhood or in the wealthy neighborhoods of South Korea. Yes, people dress elegantly, people have a good presence, you can tell. But if you leave those areas, people dress normally, they dress. Many of them actually wear caps, Adidas caps, Nike caps. And they go dressed in jeans and things like that. Seriously, you would be surprised.
As if there weren't disorganized, toxic, and unfaithful men in Korea too.
Of course, South Korea has everything since they're human, just like us.
For them, apparently those flaws are exclusive to Latin America. But don't think that only happens with girls. On TikTok, there are also guys who consider themselves trans-Korean and want to look just like K-pop singers at all costs. They change their hairstyle, their clothes, their poses, the way they talk, and even the way they walk, hoping to wake up one day and look like Jungkook but a local version.
Look, I don't think it's bad to imitate the way many of these people dress. Some of them dress really well, so I don't think it's wrong to get inspired by their style. But I'm telling you, these people adopt all the traits of Korean culture.
Under this trend, being Latino seems like a curse that people try to fix with filters, makeup, and a worrying amount of imagination. Hi, I'm Astro Recargado, and today we're going to talk about a pretty viral trend on TikTok that's basically about Latino teenagers who do whatever it takes to look Korean. Because according to them, to be successful, cute, and attractive on social media, you have to look Asian. And just to be clear, I'm not here to criticize K-pop, the singers, or the idols at all. What I'm here to do is question how Korean culture, or the idealization of it, has reached the point of destroying the self-esteem of so many teenagers who now feel ashamed of their roots and of how they look. On TikTok, there are many trends related to Asian culture, most of them driven by K-pop, a music genre so popular that many people seem to have turned it into a religion. Because for certain fans, their favorite singers are not just artists, but perfect beings who never make mistakes and never grow old. And probably, according to their distorted view of reality, they don't even need to go to the bathroom because they literally see them as glorious bodies.
Be careful, this can seriously impact the idol's mental health as they feel pressured to be perfect and can't make mistakes. In fact, many of them can't even have a romantic relationship, at least not publicly, because if the fans find out, they completely lose their minds.
And while admiring an artist is completely normal, some young girls have taken that admiration to rather worrying levels. For example, some girls have gone so far as to offer rather questionable things just to get a ticket to the concert, for example, their virginity.
I gave up my virginity for a BTS ticket. My friend doing whatever it takes for a BTS ticket. She arrives with the amazing old man, my old man.
A ticket for the show? Others have had more creative ideas like planting trees in Peru so that when their favorite group landed before the show they would see the most beautiful country from the sky. For some of these girls, their admiration for these groups is no longer just about listening to their songs and going to their concerts, but also about trying to look like them, that is, like Korean women. Because according to their theories, if they look like a Korean girl, the guys will immediately notice them. And that's exactly where the trend of the so-called trans Koreans was born.
This is important and I encourage you to do it. If you ever have the chance to be in South Korea, please, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, download Tinder and create a male profile. Do it. If you're in South Korea, do it, please. And you're going to see something peculiar. It turns out that instead of meeting Korean women, you'll come across women from Brazil, Colombia, Argentina, Ecuador, and Mexico. And you'll be left wondering why. Well, it turns out that there are many women who pay for Tinder Premium to change their location and show up for Korean men. Honestly, this is not a joke. That way they can attract a Korean guy and move to South Korea. Seriously, it's crazy.
Basically, young Latin Americans, mainly from countries like Peru, Mexico, Colombia, or Ecuador, who say they don't feel identified with their nationality and claim that in reality they should have been born in Korea. Although, well, there are exceptions of other girls who say they should have been born in France.
We, the transnational people, exist. We are people who were born in one place and feel identified with a different nationality.
But France is Mbappe's land nowadays. France is land, France is Africa. I don't know if that's the France you're referring to.
Not from that country. I was born in Colombia, but I feel French. I dress and live like a French woman. I have no connection with Colombia.
I don't blame her. She looks whiter than the average French person. Well, these new French people, you know what I'm talking about.
I try to hide my accent as much as possible because I don't feel Colombian.
Do you speak French?
No? Have you been to France?
No, neither. I'm actually the closest thing to one.
He clearly hasn't been to France.
I'm Korean, I have Korean descendants.
Korean, really?
And how is that? Well, yes, it's because I have Korean genes. Korean genes? Yes, that's why when I write sometimes I end up writing kind of small because, well, there's the, let's see.
I'm telling you, it's not impossible for me to have Korean genes. By the way, we're quickly reacting to a video from the Soy AT channel. You don't say descendants, you say ancestry. If she had descendants, it would mean she had a child with a Korean man, and her child would be half Korean, half Peruvian. That's not impossible. If you don't believe me, ask Peru's elected president, who's half Japanese, Keiko, of course.
In my desire to write Korean, these kids have done everything to look Asian. They've even taken photos with such exaggerated filters that if they ever get lost, God forbid, and their families use those pictures for the missing person poster, they'll probably end up finding someone else.
The excessive use of filters in their photos hindered the search.
We made a video about that, it's crazy. That story is real, just imagine.
She disappeared and no one could find her.
Within this trend, girls constantly show how they try to lighten their skin with creams, makeup that's 20 shades lighter, and also with some pretty questionable products without even realizing the damage they're doing to their own bodies. All of this just to fit into that beauty standard. Some claim to be experts in transformation, supposedly teaching others how to look like Korean idols. A tutorial to become a trans Korean girl? The funny thing is that most of those tutorials basically consist of changing everything that makes them who they are, mainly their features, which obviously aren't Asian. And this is where the problem starts, because many of these girls dream of having perfect skin, being extremely thin, taller, and having physical features that simply don't match their genetics. No matter how many filters, makeup, or skincare routines they use, they'll always feel like something is missing to reach that ideal, but they keep keep at it. Some girls, the older ones who follow this trend, show how they saved for years to travel to Korea and completely transform themselves. They upload videos where they romanticize the whole process on social media and even encourage other girls to follow the same path.
Like, wow, that girl didn't do a bad job, but she'll never be Korean. No matter how much surgery you get or how hard you try, you'll never be Korean.
If moving to another country were enough to change who you are, I think one of the saddest things about this whole trend is seeing how so many young people literally feel uncomfortable with their roots to the point of completely rejecting them, and feeling ashamed of how they look, of their skin color, of their family, and above all, of the land where they were born. And as expected, this whole trend not only had an impact on an individual level, but also affected how people look for partners and their ideal concept of love, to the point of completely romanticizing the image of the Korean man. For many girls, they are practically perfect beings, loving, respectful, attentive, faithful, successful, and emotionally available. Basically, a mix between Prince Charming, a psychologist, and a K-drama lead.
I want an Asian guy. Are you Asian? High standards. I mean, wouldn't you want a guy with normal eyes, so to speak, here in Mexico? Oh no.
But she doesn't want a regular Asian guy, a regular Korean guy. She wants a K-pop Korean guy. She wants the Korean guy who wears a suit, who's in Gangnam, who works at Samsung or something like that. That's what she's looking for. If a regular Korean guy showed up, she'd accept him too. We just saw this with Koreans who went to Mexico to support their national team. She would probably also accept a random Korean guy just for the simple fact that he's Korean.
Oh god, I'm so tired of pretending that I like Latino guys. Please send me a Korean guy. Kim Tae-hyung, for example.
According to them, all Korean men are exactly like the characters from the series they watch on Netflix. That's why they say they could never fall in love with a Latino guy. Because according to their theory, the only good men on the planet were born in South Korea. And of course, since they're convinced that the love of their lives is there, many become obsessed with the idea of finding a Korean man at all costs. They look for them on social media, dating apps, Facebook groups, cultural events, and any place where there's even the slightest chance of finding someone with Asian features.
This is completely real, and it's more widespread than most people realize. And I think there's not enough talk about this.
Ironically, it often doesn't even matter if they're actually Korean. As long as they have slanted eyes, that's enough because you can use them to take a picture and show off on TikTok saying that you finally found the love of your life. And I don't think age matters much either because I've seen some cases where that Korean Prince Charming literally looks more like a sensei because of all the years he has on him than a Korean idol, but he still fits the bill.
Oh my god, this is a grandpa. Incredible. But he's Korean. No, he's not a normal grandpa, guys. He's Korean.
There are videos where really young girls and also adult women literally melt or start crying when they see a Korean guy. I mean, the situation is honestly pretty obsessive.
She freaked out. I had never seen my daughter so excited in her life. She saw a Korean boy. She doesn't know how to act.
But he's just a random Korean guy. He's just a really random Korean guy. It's incredible. I mean, if that guy were Latino, this woman wouldn't even look at him. Subscribe.
But that fixation isn't just limited to women. There are also guys on TikTok who are convinced they're the distant, homegrown cousin of some member of a K-pop group. They change their hairstyle, their clothes, the way they pose in photos, and even the way they walk just to look like one.
Because we can agree that most of them, about 80 or 90% of the men who are trans-Korean, are from the community, right? I mean, no offense, it's the truth.
For them, it's not just about admiring one of those singers or idols, but about looking exactly like them. All in the hope of feeling more attractive, more desired, and in some cases, superior to other men who don't fit into this aesthetic ideal. And look, I'm not saying that listening to K-pop, watching K-dramas, or admiring any of these artists is wrong. The problem starts when that admiration turns into obsession and ends up completely ruining your self-esteem. Over time, you begin to feel that being yourself isn't enough. That your skin color is wrong, that the way you speak is wrong, that your features are wrong, that your family is wrong, and that your roots are something you should be ashamed of.
And I also don't see anything wrong with moving to South Korea. I'm telling you, I myself lived in South Korea. South Korea obviously is a country where many of these people could find more opportunities. I mean, there's nothing wrong with emigrating. Moving to South Korea, to Seoul, there's nothing wrong with that. What's strange about these people is that many of them feel Korean. They think they're Korean, they're trans-Korean. That's how they define themselves. Trans-Koreans, impressive.
Getting into those dynamics means living in constant comparison against impossible standards to achieve. Because even if you use 20 filters, put white makeup on your face, or learn to say 2 words in Korean, you're still Latin American. And that shouldn't be a reason for shame because it's part of who you are.
Just to be clear, this isn't exclusive to Latin America. I'm just saying we notice it because it's our region, right? But it's not something exclusive to Latin Americans. There's a huge obsession among many people from many countries with Korean culture. Even within Asia, there's an obsession with Korean culture. But let's say there are certain countries in Asia that could go much more unnoticed. They could go to South Korea and really look Korean for obvious reasons. You know what I mean, right? Many are quite similar.
So many people spend years trying to become someone else without realizing that the problem was never their appearance, but rather the idea that the internet sold them about it. Also, that neo-religious worship of Korean culture is quite questionable.
And there's something very important. South Korea, I like it. It's a country that's not bad. Honestly, very modern, shopping malls with robots. It's a country that even seems cheap to me, relatively accessible, all things considered. But I wouldn't live in South Korea again. In fact, honestly, I wouldn't even travel to South Korea again. I know I'll probably have to go back, but if it were up to me, I wouldn't travel to South Korea again. And not for any bad reason, but because, honestly, South Korea seems to me, I don't know, like a cold country. And when I say cold, I don't mean the temperature, but cold, flavorless. It's something hard to explain. It's just an average country, and next to it you have other countries that are much more exciting, like Japan or China, which I find infinitely more exciting to visit than South Korea. With all due respect, I feel that South Korea is way below, even from my point of view. It's below other countries like Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand when it comes to traveling. Seriously, for a trip, it's the worst of all these. Maybe even below the Philippines. For traveling, yes, almost certainly. Now, when it comes to living there, like I said, it's a very cold society. That's the problem with South Korea. In fact, many of the statistics that people attribute to the Japanese, like for example, people who take their own lives, depression, low birth rates, all those statistics. Yes, Japan has an issue with that, but it isn't as serious as people think. In Japan, people take their own lives on average less than in several European countries, like Belgium for example, and less than in the United States, on average. Just imagine that. I mean, it's incredible. The country that actually has high numbers is South Korea. I mean, it's a country with high levels of depression, where there's a lot of stress. The country that really has all those sky-high statistics and figures, and even has the lowest birth rate in the world, is South Korea. That's why I tell you, it's a very cold society. It's a society that's highly idealized. Even so, honestly, I think that in terms of modernity, it's probably the most complete country out of all the ones I mentioned. Maybe even more complete than China, because while it's true that the top of China is amazing, like Shanghai, hyper-futuristic cities, the reality is that if you move around certain areas, let's say it's less consistent than South Korea. And yes, South Korea is much more modern than Japan, but Japan is more epic. But anyway, as I was saying, South Korea is very idealized. Let's continue.
Because even though everything seems perfect on TikTok, the reality is much more complex. South Korea faces huge problems regarding mental health, enormous social pressure, and beauty standards so demanding that they affect millions of people every day. In other words, we're not talking about the paradise where everyone is happy, beautiful, and lives inside a K-drama. We're talking about a real country with real problems and real people. The same country that has one of the highest rates among developed countries of people who take their own lives.
Just take a look. Brutal, brutal. And I think this statistic is old, because nowadays Japan is below many of these, and South Korea has increased more. Much more.
And no, girl, I'm afraid to tell you that not all Korean men are like the ones you saw in your Netflix series. Some will leave you on red, others will cheat on you. There will even be others who won't even reply to your messages because after all, they're human, not dogs.
And many of them, especially the ones these women like, are men who have options. They're men who can date many women. So think about it. Why would they pay attention? Well, you know what I'm talking about, right? They're men who have a lot of women at their disposal. right? I'm mainly talking about the men these girls like, men who look like idols, who look like K-pop stars, who seem like they're straight out of a K-drama, that kind of man.
Characters created by a screenwriter who basically made them to satisfy your romantic needs. You need to come back down to Earth and realize that you live on planet Earth and not in a fantasy story, for God's sake.
So, what do you think about this case? Had you ever heard of people who identify as Korean? Share your thoughts in the comments. See you next time. Subscribe.